I'm up in a place called Yallinburra, remote East Island land in the Northern Territory, one of the most sacred parts of our country. And I'm staring out at the most incredible landscapes I've ever seen. Untouched dunes, bright blue water, incredible wildlife, most of it friendly, and some of it, like crocs, you've got to keep your eye on. But as we walked on the beach with the Indigenous Rangers, a beach looked after by relatives of these same First Australians for over 60,000 years. This sea country that once told powerful dreaming stories passed from generation to generation, now told a different one. As we walked on the sand, we did not hear the sounds of the rolling waves or the sounds of the birds flying overhead. We heard the sounds of layers and layers of plastic crunching beneath our feet. Knowing that every step that we took would lead to smaller plastic fragments, microplastics, likely to remain there forever, to become part of the sand, part of the story. I've been travelling all across the world trying to do everything I can to clean and protect our ocean. And for me, this was the hardest cleanup mentally I've ever done. Shockingly, this beach is still the most polluted beach I've ever been to in my life. And as we got to work cleaning this beach, 10 hours a day of grueling, sweaty labour, we ended up cleaning 10.98 tonnes of plastic, or the equivalent of 214,688 pieces removed. And as I'm standing there picking up bottle after bottle, toys, containers, every single plastic item you could imagine, it made me think, how did we get to this point? Plastic flowing throughout the world's ocean currents to end up in remote beaches, sacred beaches, here in Australia. And if what they say is true, that there will be more plastic than fish in the sea by 2050 and that plastic production is expected to triple by 2060, if this is today, then what will the future hold? Despite these dystopian questions ringing through my mind, I had hope. Because in just a few months from that cleanup, world leaders were going to get together for the final round of negotiations for the Global Plastics Treaty, a landmark international agreement to get a global consensus on phasing out plastic, similar to what they did with nuclear weapons back in the 1970s. The world held out, and after nearly 4 years and 6 rounds of negotiation, the negotiations broke down and led to nothing. Infiltrated by a small number of petro-states and lobbyists of the plastics industry, this global plastics treaty completely stalled and broke down, and now we're left with nothing. So with no global approach, what now? What next? As a country girt by sea, with the 3rd largest ocean domain in the world, and being significantly impacted by plastics, I truly believe we, Australia, can be the ones that can lead the world. We're a small nation, but we punch well above our weight. We gave the world Wi-Fi and transformed communication. We gave the world the solar PV using 90% of global solar panels all across the world. We even gave the world home and away. Look, we've had some hits and some misses, but it's in our culture to deliver breakthroughs. Now it's time for our next big one, ending the global addiction to plastics. I've been on a quest this past year to really try to unpack how plastic is impacting us locally, but more importantly, what we can do to solve this. How Australia, how we, can be plastic's last straw. For me, this is a deeply personal mission that I've devoted the last 6 years of my life to. 6 years ago, I had an experience with plastic that completely ignited a fire in my belly that I haven't been able to put out. I was training water polo down in the bay where I live in Cronulla, and as we got in the water, as we started swimming, as we started passing the balls, there was just plastic and rubbish getting all over us. That the coach said, all right, training's over, everyone get out. And I just remember being so disgusted and just thinking, surely there's something I can do to tackle plastics at the source. So I started Plastic Free Cronulla to work directly with the business community to switch them from plastic to non-plastic items. The largest venue we worked with was the RSL, who are using 120,000 plastic straws every year and switching from plastic to paper. We built up this movement and lobbied the state government on behalf of over 400 local businesses and helped to get key single-use items banned, such as plastic straws and plastic cutlery. So if you have a soft paper straw in New South Wales, you can blame me. Apologies for that. That win saw me selected to be part of the World Ocean Day Youth Advisory Council and then invited to go speak at the United Nations COP27 over in Egypt. And that experience absolutely changed my life. Because I feel like a lot of the times we think about these big global problems, we just think, oh, there's nothing that we can do. There's nothing that I can do. I can't change the world. What's the point? But if everyone has that mindset, nothing's going to change. And learning about the impacts of climate change, the impacts of plastic globally, I truly believe that the best place to start is at home. So off the back of going to the UN, I decided to make the documentary Rising Up, and I travelled to Tuvalu, the least visited country in the world, to Samoa, Indonesia, all across Australia, to try to find hope and solutions to climate change and plastic pollution. And this journey, travelling all across the world, continually reiterated to me the importance to look after our own local environment. So last year, I decided to put my hand up and ran for local council and got elected as the youngest ever independent councillor in the Southern Shire where I live, which was and outpolled both major parties in most of the booths, running on a platform to clean our waterways, which no one was expecting. So if it's ever a sign that Australians really want to see strong action for plastics, then that is. And the last year, I've really been trying to spread this message of hope around our environment to take action. And with the program I run, Blue Minds, I've been speaking to over 20,000 people in person all across the country. And I can tell you that from Cairns to Warrnambool to the Margaret River, Australians are so concerned about plastic. They're concerned how it's infiltrating our beaches and environment, how it's infiltrating our animals. But there's another problem, a hidden problem, that not many of us are aware of. How it's infiltrating our human health and leading to some really concerning health outcomes. Right now, everyone here ingests roughly the weight of a plastics credit card worth of microplastics every single week. And this is being found all over our body, in our blood, in our brain, in our breast milk, placentas, you name it. And these plastics are made with around 16,000 chemicals, of which only about a quarter have been tested for human safety. So quite concerning. There is now conclusive scientific evidence of how these chemicals in plastics are leaching out and driving the increases of diseases such as cancers, diabetes, and other negative health outcomes such as infertility. So as part of this quest, unpacking the plastics problem, I did something that you probably wouldn't have heard before in a TED talk. I got my urine tested to check what chemicals are related to plastic that are in my system. And after a few months, I got the results back, and after testing for 13 of the most common plastic-related chemicals, I found out that most of them are in me. The most concerning of these are phthalates, used to make plastic soft and brittle, which is a chemical known as an endocrine disruptor, interfering with our hormones, so the system that keeps our bodies in balance. Because I thought, well, I've cut out most of the single-use plastic in my life. So if I've got this exposure, then my friends, my family, people in my community would most likely have it worse. And Australians, we have one of the highest exposure rates of plastic in the world. According to the WWF, Australia is the second largest producer of plastic waste per person in the world. Despite our awareness of the problem, the awareness of the solutions, our plastic consumption is increasing every single year. Back in 2010, it was 127 kilos of plastic consumed per person. And the latest study in 2021 has us now at 147 kilos of plastic per person. And our drive, our continual plastic consumption is leading to this losing war on plastic on our animals. For example, loggerhead turtles, these endangered loggerhead turtles up in Queensland, 86% of these turtles have ingested plastic. And I've seen the worst of these impacts over at Tonga Zoo's Wildlife Hospital, where they're trying to rehabilitate and save turtles full of our plastic. And one of these, Tama, a tiny turtle named Tama because it was found just down at Tamarama Beach, just down the road here. And this turtle was only a few weeks old, and it pooed plastic for 8 days. What we're seeing with plastic, this is not our fault. But it is all of our fight. Whether we like it or not, we're all in this together. So what needs to change? How do we fix this? So all of the different individual steps that we can do on the day-to-day level, so reducing our individual plastic exposure is so important. Every time we can use a reusable key cup, reusable bottle, bag, container, whatever it is so important to change those statistics and reduce our exposure. But what we truly need right now is systems change. And the exciting thing right now is that Australians, more than any other time in human history, want to see these actions. So the studies have shown that over 3/4 of Australians prefer products with as little packaging as possible and are concerned about plastic. We just need the policy to follow suit. Because we've been talking about plastic pollution, about the concerns to our environment literally since the 1980s, but always relying on voluntary efforts and never bringing about mandatory schemes to address this. The most recent of which was back 8 years ago. The Australian federal government set out these targets by 2025, so this year, to have 100% of packaging to be recyclable, compostable, or biodegradable. So 8 years on, we're now at 13%. Not only did this voluntary target completely miss the mark, we've just lost another 8 years of progress. Now several industry and federal government reports are calling for mandatory schemes. The time for lip service is over. We need to be patient for perfection, a truly fixed system, but we need to be impatient with action. Because I've seen the worst of plastic impacts on our animals, I've seen plastic on beaches all over the country, and now I've seen the chemicals of plastic that are in my system. And if we do this, if we take action, we can truly show the world what is possible. Because in Australia, for example, we're already taking a lot of great strides. In South Australia, they just became the first state to ban the little soy sauce fish plastic things that I've seen at pretty much every beach cleanup all across the country and in the bellies of turtles. Even small towns are stepping up. I was just in Bunjanoon, a small regional town in the Southern Highlands, where 15 years ago, they became the first town in the whole world to ban plastic water bottles. It can be done. We just have to have the courage to act. It is so important to keep having these conversations with politicians of all levels and encouraging them to be accountable, to take action and to have courage. And as a politician now, I can assure you that we aren't all, some of us are, but we aren't all that scary. So having conversations is so important to really try to drive the future that we want to create. And recycling is not the answer. A lot of people talking about recycling for plastics and how that's the path to move forward, but plastics can only be recycled about 3 times. And it's actually way worse for our human health because of all the extra chemicals that are added to make it. I have hope because we have everything in our control to change the narrative of this losing war on plastic on our animals, our beaches and our human health. And we have the solutions to start. This will improve our health, the survival of our species, and it will clean up our shores. We all have a role to play to get to this dream, so let's all take the first step. Because when future generations are walking on these beaches, they won't hear the sound of plastic crunching beneath their feet. They'll hear the squelch of sand and thank us as the generation that was plastic's last straw.